what I came here to talk to you about today was cucumber beetles. So it's an insect pest that all on its own can certainly be a damaging agent. I'm going to shut this off for just a second. I'm going to walk over here, and what we'll often use just to be able to detect whether or not we've got cucumber beetles in our patch ends up being a yellow sticky card. I got here about 10 minutes before we came out here, so I've got 1, 2, 3 cucumber beetles already on here. But I also put them in these blue Hubbards. And if Judy's here, I hope she would agree that those are blue Hubbards. I'm not that good of a horticulturalist, but they look like a blue Hubbard to me. That's the cucumber beetle's absolute favorite food of all cucurbits. Pumpkins, cucumbers, squash, summer squash, winter squash, pickler slicers, blue Hubbards are it. Now keep that in mind, because that's actually a good bit of information to know as far as putting together a comprehensive management program for this insect pest. Now there's several different things that we can do to manage for this insect. It's going to overwinter in unmanaged areas around the patch here, and it's in any sort of overgrown or grown up areas. So good sanitation and close mowing is going to allow frost to run deeper in a soil, and it'll freeze, and just like with Colorado potato beetle, it'll kill cucumber beetles. But there's a lot of trade-off there as well, because a lot of those non-managed areas that have floral nectaries are also where a lot of our native bees forage, and they come from. So here again, it's a bit of a trade-off. Later planting. These beetles will emerge from overwintering around as early as late April into early May. They'll find the first cucumbers, whether it's wild cucumber or the first cucumber in the field, they'll find it as soon as they can. They're attracted to cucurbitacin, the protein that's in the group of cucurbits. And they'll fly right to it and begin to feed. And very young plants, the direct damage they can cause, they can actually kill these plants. But again, the problem more than anything is this early feeding in a lot of cucurbits, and in particular in our melon crop, like our muskmelon or our cantaloupes. They'll carry a bacterium with it called Erwinia trachyophila, just the bacterium, the genus and species of bacteria that will cause bacterial wilt. And I'm going to just guess that wilting right there in those blue Hubbards is probably just a little bit of water stress. But when you see bacterial wilt, you'll just see an entire vine just collapse and go down. If you can't resurrect that, or if the rest of your crop looks good and you've got a wilted plant, you absolutely need to remove that plant. That plant is coursing with bacterium. Beetles are actually preferentially attracted to those wilting plants. They'll feed on it, acquire that bacterium, and move to the next plant. So there's no question, one of the most effective ways to mitigate bacterial wilt is through removal of any affected vine. So, but also know that different varieties of cucurbits respond differently. Our watermelons down there are pretty much immune. They're not affected by bacterial wilt. Our muskmelons, cantaloupes are the most highly susceptible, followed by probably cucumbers, then winter squash, summer squash, early pumpkins. Late pumpkins aren't nearly as affected. But because we know that, there are different thresholds for different populations or different crops. We can't tolerate much on muskmelons or squash, or muskmelons or cantaloupe, I should say. Excuse me. Our threshold there is 1 insect per plant. Now on those more tolerant species, we can ratchet that up to 5 insects per plant. But you need to closely watch your patch and be for sure, and if you need to, you might need to treat. Now as an organic producer, what would you spray cucumber beetles with?
Pyrethrum.
It's about it, unfortunately, and trust won't work. And it is, pyrethrin or the pyganic is really about the only thing we have. And this is a tough insect to kill even with the synthetic version of that, the synthetic pyrethrum. It is, it's a very challenging insect. So what some of our work that we've done in the past 2 years working with some of our producers in western Wisconsin is to document the relative efficacy of some early season cultural practices or cultural treatments, and those really center around the use of trap crops and row cover. So I told you beetles come out early in the spring. They're one of the first to emerge from overwintering. If you cover all your cucurbits in row cover, they'll come out and you'll see them walking on that row cover, but they're not as dumb as the people that study them. They'll actually get up and get out of there. They won't linger. So don't just cover your melons, your cantaloupes, or your muskmelon. You need to cover all your cucurbits. And then I've heard of people very effectively covering all of their cucurbits for a couple of successive years. And then after a couple of years, they might not even have row cover the third year, just because they've flushed cucumber beetles out of the neighborhood. Now, I'm proud for people that can do that. It's a challenge. But there's no question you can effectively do that. For anyone that's interested, I brought with me basically a review presentation that talks about our work there, and you will see in here, at least from a lot of our work, and everyone's welcome to have a copy, looking at not only insect counts, but also bacterial wilt counts against our existing conventional products, our in-furrow neonics, seed treatments, and so forth. We do just as good with early season row cover, keeping beetles off of those for the first 40 days of the crop as we do with any of these plants. And we've documented that over multiple sites and multiple species. So very much, and I should not fail to mention, we've had great success when we've also sacrificed by having a trap crop in that same area. So if you put blue Hubbards out and cover the remainder of your crop, you will concentrate a lot of your beetles on a trap, and you can focus your kill there. And you can use your pyrethrin, for example, on a very limited amount of your cucurbit acres and protect in large part the vast majority of others. And we've demonstrated we've had great success with that. Yes, ma'am?
What do you mean covered the rows?
So it's a frost protection row cover or a floating row cover. You can buy it in different bolt widths.
You mean like plastic?
It's not a plastic. It's like an organdy type material. You can buy like in the greenhouse supply catalogs. It comes in different thicknesses or mill rates, but we'll put hoops out like a steel hoop and cover the row. I mean, the way that, for example, Judy has this, we'd have to put a big cover over this, but they're like a little mini greenhouse that you would erect early in the season. And we've seen more and more of this out in a lot of our fresh market industries in western Wisconsin, and the reports we get back is we've got a lot of success, especially when people cover all of their crop. Again, I hesitate to say that just cover your muskmelons and your cantaloupes and leave others unprotected, because you'll generate beetles on your other crops and truly never get rid of them. Yes, sir?
What about cedar oil for disrupting the mating and feeding?
Well, there are products that are commercially sold that have plant derivatives like oils and such, and I can honestly say we haven't looked at those. And the extent to which, I mean, there are garlic oil components, there are cinnamons, there are a variety of these mixes, and unfortunately I can't comment on that. And if it works for you, great, absolutely great. But a lot of just these, I want to say simple, but relatively simple cultural management practices that don't involve a lot of inputs, again, we put no insecticide on top of these materials that came out from underneath these row covers. And certainly it takes, you and 3 or 4 graduate students that aren't very happy to be there quite a little while to put out a few thousand feet of this. But unquestionably it works. But again, I can't comment on that specific question.